aged cheese. What's the blue in the blue vein cheese? The blue in the blue vein cheese is mould. So the only cheeses that don't sit under that category, the cheeses that have probably a pH of 7 would be your fresh. So that's your cottage, your ricotta. I'm not saying that they are okay, because usually they come from cows who have not been fed right or have chemicals in them. But on the pH scale, they're not as acid.
Do you love cheese? You're not alone. Cheese is a beloved food enjoyed by millions worldwide, whether melted on pizza, paired with wine, or as a tasty snack. It's rich, creamy, and undeniably delicious. But what if I told you that some types of cheese could increase your risk of cancer? Yes, you heard that right. Research shows that certain cheeses contain harmful substances that might be linked to an increased risk of certain cancers. In fact, studies have suggested that dairy products, especially those high in fat, could contribute to the development of conditions like breast and prostate cancer. According to a study published in the International Journal of Cancer, people who consume large amounts of dairy products have a higher likelihood of developing these cancers. So why is cheese linked to cancer risk? And what are the specific types of cheese that you should be aware of? Keep watching this video because we're going to reveal the cheeses you might want to think twice about. Believe me, this information could change the way you look at cheese forever. Before we begin, take a moment to comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Also, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. Let's jump into it. Number 1, processed cheese. Processed cheese is made by melting natural cheeses such as cheddar or Colby and stirring in water, salt, emulsifying salts, and sometimes small amounts of preservatives. The mix is heated to around 90 degrees Celsius for 15 to 20 minutes. Emulsifying salts, commonly sodium citrate or sodium phosphate at 3 to 4% by weight, keep the fat and water from separating. After cooling, the product contains about 40–60% water, 10–12% protein, 20–25% fat, and 4–8% salt. Its even texture and stable melt point make it popular for burgers, grilled sandwiches, and pre-packaged snacks. Manufacturers often add sodium nitrate, up to 150 milligrams per kilograms of cheese milk, and sodium nitrite, up to 50 milligrams in the final product. A single 28-gram slice can hold roughly 0.4 milligrams of nitrate and 0.02 milligrams of nitrite. In the acidic environment of the stomach, pH 1.5–3.5, oral and gut bacteria convert nitrate into nitrite. Nitrite can then react with protein breakdown products to form N-nitroso compounds. These compounds are small enough to cross into cells and have been shown in lab tests to bind DNA and cause mutations. One N-nitroso compound, N-nitrosodium N-butylamine, has been measured in processed cheese at levels of 20–30 Ug per kg. In animal studies, rodents fed 1 to 10 milligrams per kg of body weight developed tumors in the forestomach, liver, and bladder over several months of exposure. While humans eat far smaller amounts, the continuous daily intake of these compounds can add up over years. The body may repair some DNA damage, but repeated exposure increases the chance that a harmful mutation will persist. Epidemiologists link high intake of processed meats to colorectal cancer. Eating 50 grams of processed meat per day raises colorectal cancer risk by about 18% over a lifetime. Although processed cheese is not meat, it follows a similar chemical pathway for nitrosamine formation. A large dietary survey showed that adding 10% more ultra-processed foods, including processed cheeses, to daily calories corresponded to a 10% rise in overall cancer incidence. Biomarker studies also find that people who eat high nitrite foods have elevated markers of oxidative DNA damage in gastric and colon tissue. In the United States, per capita cheese consumption reached 19 kilograms in 2022, with processed cheese making up about 17% of that total. That amounts to roughly 3.2 kinds of processed cheese per person each year. In countries with high fast food use, processed cheese appears in an estimated 30–50% of burgers and sandwiches. Those who eat fast food 3 or more times a week can easily exceed 100 grams of processed cheese intake per week, delivering higher daily nitrite and nitrate loads than those who cook at home. Daily nitrite intake from processed cheese can reach 0.1–0.2 milligallons for heavy consumers. Long-term data suggests that nitrite intake above 0.07 milligallons per kg of body weight per day may overwhelm the body's natural repair systems. People weighing 70 kilojoules who eat 3 28-gram slices per day could approach this threshold. Over decades, that level of exposure may raise cancer risk, especially in the colon and stomach, where nitrite conversion and nitrosamine formation occur. Reducing processed cheese intake can cut nitrosamine exposure in half within weeks. Swapping 1 slice per day for fresh cheese, such as mozzarella or ricotta, can cut nitrite intake by more than 90%. Eating 100 pounds and 200 grams of vitamin C-rich fruits or vegetables per meal lowers nitrosamine formation in the stomach by up to 70%. High-pressure processing and modified atmosphere packaging offer ways to preserve cheese without added nitrates. As awareness grows, more brands now offer nitrate-free processed cheese with similar taste and texture but far lower nitrite content. Number 2, smoked cheese. Smoked cheese gains its flavor during exposure to smoke from burning wood or by adding condensed liquid smoke. In cold smoking, cheeses rest at 20–30 degrees C near smoldering wood for 4 to 12 hours. Hot smoking occurs at 50–70 degrees C for shorter periods. Both methods deposit polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, on the cheese surface. PAHs form when organic matter burns without enough oxygen, and some PAHs are known human carcinogens. Analytical tests of smoked Gouda and cheddar show total PAH levels of 9 to 26 Ug per kilos of cheese. Of this total, 0.7 to 2.9 Ug per kilo consist of 5 key carcinogenic PAHs: benzoapirenine, benzoanthracene, chrysene, benzocofluoranthene, and dibenzoanthracene. Benzoapirenine alone is classified as a Group 1 carcinogen, meaning there is sufficient evidence that it causes cancer in humans. PAHs are lipophilic, so they dissolve easily in fat. Smoked cheeses often contain 25–30% fat. Eating a 100-gram combined serving may deliver 2 to 5 Ug of carcinogenic PAHs. In dietary studies, PAHs from smoked and grilled foods make up about 10 to 15% of total daily PAH intake for non-smokers. The median lifetime cancer risk from dietary PAHs is estimated at 6.7 to 10 to 5. Regularly eating smoked cheese can add to that risk, though it remains lower than heavy consumption of smoked meats or fish. In lab studies, benzoapirenine undergoes metabolic activation by liver enzymes into a diol epoxide that binds to DNA. This DNA adduct can block replication or lead to incorrect base pairing. Over time, cells with such mutations can form tumors. Animal experiments confirm that dietary benzoapirenine causes lung, skin, and liver tumors in rodents at doses of 5 to 50 Ug per kilograms of body weight per day. Although humans eat much lower doses, repeated exposure is a concern. Human research links frequent intake of smoked and grilled foods to higher risks of colon, pancreas, and prostate cancers. One cohort found that people who ate smoked foods 3 times per week had a 15% higher risk of colorectal cancer than those who ate them less than once a week. A smaller study noted that individuals who consumed smoked cheeses more than twice weekly showed a 12% increase in DNA damage markers in colon cells compared to infrequent consumers. Average per capita cheese consumption in Western Europe is about 20 kiloliters per year. If 10% of that is smoked cheese, each person eats roughly 2 kilos of smoked cheese annually, translating to about 60 UG of carcinogenic PAHs per year. In regions that favour smoked dairy, the figure may be higher. Risk accumulates over a lifetime as PAHs bind to DNA and persist in tissues. Replacing traditionally smoked cheese with products flavoured using liquid smoke can cut PAH levels by 40–60%. Liquid smoke is filtered to remove heavier PAHs before condensation. In one test, Gouda flavoured with liquid smoke had 3 UG/kg total PAHs versus 20 UG/kg in wood-smoked Gouda. Washing or trimming the outer rind can remove another 20–30% of surface PAHs. Eating 100–200 grams of cruciferous vegetables, such as broccoli or kale, 3 times per week, can boost detoxification enzymes in the liver by up to 50%, aiding PAH breakdown. Keeping smoked cheese to small servings, no more than 50 grams per sitting, and limiting frequency to once weekly can halve PAH intake compared to heavier use. Although smoked cheese adds a distinct aroma and flavour, it carries measurable levels of PAHs that link to cancer in lab and population studies. By choosing liquid smoke alternatives, trimming rinds and balancing diet with detox-supporting vegetables, you can enjoy smoky taste while cutting long-term risk. Number 3, aged hard cheese. Aged hard cheeses include cheddar, parmesan, Parmigiano Reggiano, Asiago, and aged Gouda. These cheeses mature from 6 months up to 3 years. Moisture content falls from around 36% in young cheese to below 30% in extra mature varieties. Protein and fat become more concentrated. A 100-gram serving of extra mature cheddar contains 33 grams of protein, 33 grams of fat, 21 grams unsaturated, and 1,092 milligrams of calcium. Large-scale studies link high dairy intake, especially cheese, to prostate cancer. A meta-analysis of 15 studies covering 32,000 cases found that each extra 50 grams of daily cheese raised prostate cancer risk by 9%. In the NIH AARP cohort of over 300,000 men followed for 10 years, those eating more than 80 grams per day had a 27% higher risk of aggressive prostate cancer compared to men eating less than 20 grams per day. 2 main factors drive this link. First, high calcium from cheese suppresses 1,025-dihydroxyvitamin D, a hormone that slows prostate cell growth. An extra 400 milligrams of calcium per day cuts active vitamin D levels by 10–15%. Second, dairy proteins boost insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1, in the blood. Higher IGF-1 doubles cell division rates in prostate tissue and lowers programmed cell death, or apoptosis. Men with IGF-1 levels in the top quartile have a 28% greater risk of prostate cancer than those in the bottom quartile. Hard cheeses also deliver saturated fat, which can promote inflammation and oxidative stress. Chronic inflammation in the prostate gland may create an environment where tumour cells can grow more easily. In one cohort, men in the highest third of saturated fat intake had a 21% higher risk of prostate cancer than those in the lowest third. Additional fat also increases body weight, and obesity itself raises IGF-1 levels and hormone imbalances linked to cancers. The global average of cheese intake is about 14 kcal per person per year, but in countries like France and Italy, it can exceed 25 kilograms. If half of that is aged hard cheese, each person eats roughly 12 kilos of high calcium, high protein cheese annually. Over decades, sustained high levels of calcium and IGF-1 support may increase prostate cancer risk substantially. Smaller studies suggest a link beyond prostate cancer. One analysis found a slight rise in breast cancer risk with high saturated fat and dairy protein intake. though the increase was under 5% per additional 50 grams of cheese per day. Data on colorectal cancer are mixed, with some studies showing no effect and others a small risk elevation. The strongest and most consistent finding remains the prostate link. Maintaining moderate levels of calcium and IGF-1 is key. Swapping one daily serving of hard cheese, 30 g, for plant-based calcium sources, such as 100 grams of cooked kale, which has 150 milligrams calcium and no saturated fat, can lower dairy calcium intake by 300 milligrams per day. Taking 600–800 IU of vitamin D per day restores active vitamin D levels. Keeping body mass index under 25 through exercise and a balanced diet helps control IGF-1 spikes after meals. By limiting aged hard cheese to 30 to 40 grams per serving, and no more than 3 times a week, you can still grate Parmesan over pasta or eat a slice of cheddar without maintaining the high calcium and protein levels that drive prostate cancer risk in large studies. Number 4, salted cheese. Salt brine cheeses include feta, halloumi, cotija, and roquefort. These cheeses contain 2.5–4.1 g of salt per 100 grams serving. A typical block of feta has 2.8 grams salt, halloumi 3.2 g, cotija 4.1 g, and roquefort 3.0 g. The World Health Organization sets a daily salt limit of 5 g. A 150 gram serving of halloumi delivers nearly the full day's maximum in one meal. High salt intake damages the stomach lining. Over time, repeated injury leads to inflammation, atrophy, and an environment where cancer can form. A pooled review of 20 studies found that people with the highest salt intakes had 77% greater odds of gastric cancer compared to those with the lowest salt intakes. In a UK cohort of over 500,000 adults, always adding table salt to food was linked to a 41% higher risk of stomach cancer compared to never adding salt. Salt also enhances colonization by Helicobacter pylori. The bacterium thrives in high salt conditions. H. pylori infection by itself doubles gastric cancer risk. Combined with a high salt diet, the risk triples. In a 4-year follow-up of 200 H. pylori positive adults, those who consumed more than 10 grams of salt per day had a stomach cancer risk of 2.9% versus 0.8% for those under 5 grams per day. People who eat salted cheese 3 times a week, each time 150 grams of halloumi, would intake 14.4 grams of salt per week from cheese alone. Over a year, that adds up to 748 grams of salt just from halloumi. In diets already high in bread, cured meats, and snacks, total weekly salt can exceed 3 kgs. Long-term studies show that chronic salt intake above 8 grams per day triples the risk of gastric cancer compared to intake under 4 grams per day. Lower salt cheese options exist. Fresh mozzarella has about 0.3 g in salt per 100 grams and ricotta about 0.2 g. In blind taste tests, many consumers rate fresh mozzarella almost as flavorful as feta in mixed dishes. Rinsing feta under cold water for 30 seconds removes up to 30% of surface salt. Even aging halloumi for an extra week after brining can reduce salt content by 10 to 15%. Balancing salted cheese with low-salt foods helps. Eating 200 grams of fresh fruit or vegetables in the same meal dilutes salt concentration and brings antioxidants and fiber that support tissue repair. Tracking total salt from all sources, including bread, canned foods, and snacks, helps keep daily intake under 5 grams. In one dietary intervention, people who limited salt to 4 grams per day cut their gastric cancer risk markers by 25% within 6 months. By cutting serving sizes to 50 grams and limiting frequency to once or twice per week, you can still enjoy the tang of feta or the texture of halloumi without pushing your salt intake into the range that raises gastric cancer risk in large population studies. Number 5, mold-ripened cheese. Mold-ripened cheeses such as Camembert, Brie, Roquefort, Stilton, and Munster rely on fungi, Penicillium camemberti or Penicillium roqueforti, for their soft texture and distinct flavors. These fungi can produce mycotoxins, secondary metabolites that can harm cells or cause cancer. One key mycotoxin is aflatoxin M1, AFM1, which appears when cows eat feed contaminated with aflatoxin B1. During cheese ripening, AFM1 binds to casein and concentrates. Surveys report AFM1 levels averaging 13,000 Nelson per kg in some cheeses, far above the 250 to 500 Nelsons kg limit set by food agencies. Eating 100 grams of such cheese delivers 1.3 UG of AFM1. In rodent studies, diets with 0.51 milligrams of AFM1 per kg of feed led to liver tumours after several months. Penicillium roqueforti produces roquefortine C, found at 50 to 12,000 UG per kg in blue-veined cheeses. Average levels in many samples are around 420 UG kg. Roquefortine C showed mutagen effects in lab tests and caused neurotoxic damage in rodents at doses of 15 to 100 milligrams per kg of body weight. Another toxin, PR toxin, was linked to squamous cell carcinomas and uterine sarcomas in rats fed about 1 milligram per day over 18 months. Research also finds acyclopiazonic acid, CPA, in 3/4 of blue cheeses tested in some markets. CPA's long-term effects are not fully known, but it has shown genotoxic activity in cell studies. With multiple mycotoxins present, there is concern that they may act together to increase harm, even if each is below its own safety limit. Human data on cheese mycotoxins are limited by monitoring challenges. Milk testing shows seasonal spikes in AFM1 when feed contamination peaks. In areas with poor feed storage, up to 20% of dairy farms report AFM1 above safe levels in milk at least once a year. Cheese aging can further concentrate the toxin. A study of 50 small-scale dairies found that 30% of their mold-ripened cheeses exceeded the AFM1 limit at some point during ripening. Preventing mycotoxin formation starts on the farm. Good agricultural practices keep feed dry and fungal growth low. Pasteurizing milk removes much of the fungal burden, but does not destroy mycotoxins already present. Cheese producers can test milk for AFM1 and reject batches above 250 kg. During ripening, controlled humidity and temperature slow fungal overgrowth that might boost toxin levels. Consumers can reduce exposure by choosing pasteurized milk cheeses from reputable brands with routine testing. Inspecting cheese for unusual mold outside the normal veins or rind helps spot contamination. Keeping servings small, 30-50 GE, and limiting mold-ripened cheese to once a week cuts total mycotoxin intake. Rotating cheese varieties prevents repeated exposure to the same toxin profile. In spite of these risks, mold-ripened cheeses can be part of a balanced diet when sourced and handled properly. Proper feed management, routine testing, and storage at 2 to 5 degrees Celsius until the expiry date keep toxin levels low. Small, occasional servings allow people to enjoy the creamy, pungent flavors with minimal long-term mycotoxin exposure. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Hopefully this gave you a clearer picture of how something as common as cheese could be linked to something as serious as cancer. Stay informed, stay healthy, and always take a closer look at what's on your plate. And as always, if you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it.